Hi, I'm Jochen Schleser from Schleser Saddlery Service. Today I'd like to talk to you about the 9 points of saddle fitting for the Western saddle. My passion is to protect horse and rider from long-term damage. I see a lot of people out there to fit their horses but unintentionally hurt the horses. My focus is doing research on horses' back with experts around the world with biomechanics for horse and rider, as well as a lot of scientific research. I want to simplify it with the 9 points of saddle fit for the Western saddle. So please join me and let's go through the step one by one. So before we get going and go into the individual 9 points of saddle fitting, I'd like to draw your attention to the horse's back. I have drawn a figure here what humans use since 4,500 years and figured out where the horse can carry the most weight for a long period. I like to also point out through modern technology what our grandfathers knew, what areas is extremely sensitive to the horse. The flank area is where absolutely no pressure should be. Now the difference between pressure and contact I will go into a little bit later through the individual stops. Between each vertebrae there are nerves and veins coming out, and we don't want to hit those nerves. So the channel is very important, which we address later on as well. Probably the worst area for the horse to experience any kind of pressure is in this triangle right through here. We don't want any pressure in this area. I'm going to go more in detail when we talk about the tree width and the tree angle. So the next area, what is very important, is this point right here. Very important for endurance riders or long distance riders. This is the MP13, the lung meridian point. If the saddle pressures there too much, the horse will not use their full breathing, and as a competitive rider, as a trail rider, as a hobby rider, that's not what I want to do to my horse. Same stuff your ears are made of, cartilage. It's a huge blob of cartilage on top of every horse's shoulder blade, and that is something we do not want to damage. So you see there's a lot of red, but you also see there's an area right here. That's the area where we're going to focus when we go through the 9 points of saddle fitting. In this video, I'd like to talk to you about the saddle length. It's a very confusing subject. Very often people say, look how big this Western saddle is. Is it too long? Where should the bars hit? So the length of the bars is very crucial when we talk about fitting a Western saddle. Here we see the saddle support area. The red area is where the saddle cannot put any contact or pressure. Here in the flank area, we will show you a very good picture how brittle and sensitive this is. Right here, the lung meridian point, and here you see the cartilage. When the horse's leg moves forward, I brought the front limb of a miniature horse. Here's the upper arm, here's the leg, and that shoulder blade, which goes all the way up to here, has this big cartilage on top. So when the leg goes forward, that scapula moves upwards, backwards. So it's very important that the length of the saddle support area, it's not too long. How I determine this, I'd like to show you with a different type of a tool. This tool here has a very long ending. Let's say this tool represents the bar of the saddle. You would see definitely too long. But what if the flare of the bar, if the front flares up, just like this tool, and the flare in the back flares just enough up that the length might be there, but there's no pressure in the loin or on the shoulder blade. So this is absolutely important. When I took this particular saddle, I can see that this one does not flare up here and it doesn't flare up here. So the length might be okay, but the pressure is so much on the loin and so much on the shoulder that the length is now a problem. So how can the length be okay on one saddle and not okay on the other side? It's depending on the flare of the bars. Let me get another saddle tree. Here you can see we have Contact, 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 and it flares out in the back and flares out in the front. Right here where the seam is, right here where your first concho sits, behind the shoulder and the cartilage and the meridian point 13. And then your next concho sits once here and sometimes a little bit further back. So let's put a saddle on and see how that saddle would fit to that horse. Once you find that concho behind the shoulder, I can feel, yeah, the flare is off. I can see here the flare is away. And this bar contacts nicely on the saddle support area. And when the bars are all the way to the front and to the back, they don't put any pressure or contact in the loin or in the shoulder. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you find these tips very helpful. This is my calling, my passion. I like to protect horses and riders from long-term damage. Everything I showed you here, if it's your own horse, if it's your Olympic horse, if it's your pleasure horse, you will see he will be thanking you by you knowing more where the saddle can and should not sit.